Order. Patricia Gibson.
I beg to move that this House considers the pensions of Civil Nuclear Constabulary officers. Mr Chair, today is an opportunity to set out the case for the Civil Nuclear Constabulary's pension age being set at the age of 60. This is not just a common sense position, but an urgent issue of national security. I'm sure we can all agree that the effectiveness of the Civil Nuclear Constabulary is essential for maintaining the UK's nuclear security. The job with which the CNC is charged must be clearly understood as part of any discussion about the retirement age of these officers. In partnership with the civil nuclear industry, national security agencies and regulatory bodies, the CNC will deter any attacker whose intent is the theft or sabotage of nuclear material, whether static or in transit. They will defend such material and recover it should it be seized. Such dangerous work means that all CNC officers are heavily armed and are required to meet very demanding levels of physical fitness. In addition, they are employed as armed officers alongside other UK armed police, as we've seen in recent operations following terror attacks. Their role in keeping us, the public, safe is crucial, and their role is one of the most dangerous professions to enter. And we know the prospect of a retirement age of 67 rising to 68 is causing real concern to CNC officers. The Chief Constable of the CNC has warned that this change to retirement age would render the service, quote, unsustainable, and is undoubtedly creating, quote, insurmountable difficulties for CNC officers and the mission that they seek to fulfil. Indeed, this unrealistic retirement age is already damaging recruitment. The Police Oracle has reported that there has been a deterioration in turnover in CNC personnel rising to 12%, while the Civil Nuclear Police Federation says the force is 142 authorised firearm officers under strength, and in addition has seen 79 unscheduled leavers since April 2018, with 32 signalling their intention to quit recently, with recruitment numbers decreasing by half. Alarmingly, we now have 1 in every 8 CNC officers leaving for other forces or heading for Civvy Street. I will indeed.
Thank the honourable member for giving way. She's making a powerful speech. Wouldn't she agree with me that the size of the CNC means that if an officer was injured or unable to carry the equipment, that it's practically impossible, certainly very difficult, to redeploy that officer within the force, and therefore that has to be considered as a factor in terms of arguing the default pension age to be at 60.
Absolutely. And the point the honourable gentleman makes is very important, because when any of these officers suffer an injury in the line of duty, there is a duty of care of the service to then look after that officer until they are fit to return to duty. It not necessarily being on sick leave for the whole time, but it's very difficult to redeploy them because of the nature of the work that they undertake. But it's not difficult to see why the numbers of CNC officers have been eroding. They have been categorised as public sector workers for the purposes of their pension, and this means that full benefits only kick in at age 67-68, compared to conventional Home Office police officers who are able to retire at 60 years old. And what I would like the Minister to explain is if he thinks this disparity is fair, given the fact that CNC officers will be expected to carry 5 different weapons and 30 kilograms of heavy equipment at the age of 65 plus, as they are charged with protecting UK nuclear assets and act as a vital armed reserved force. If the retirement age of these officers is not to be given parity with the rest of the police service, there can be little doubt that this will continue to damage recruitment and retention of officers in the CNC. Indeed.
I thank the honourable member for giving way, and I do congratulate her from the bottom of my heart on bringing this debate before us, because it's a big issue, and although I represent the far north of Scotland, it's every bit as big to my constituents who serve in the force at Dounreay. And I recognise the contribution they make, as has been outlined by the Honourable Member, in assisting Police Scotland in their endeavours. The point I want to make today is that the loss of these skills as people leave the force surely has to be really a wholly misuse of money, because a lot of money has been spent training them up, and for them to leave altogether and go to Civil Street seems to me that that's public money being poured down the drain.
Absolutely. The honourable gentleman makes a point that needs no addition from myself, but the point he makes is very important, and I'm sure that the Minister is listening to this. This loss of skills is extremely concerning and alarming. But the damage to recruitment and retention of CNC officers can only compromise, perhaps dangerously compromise, the effectiveness of this force, and could have extremely serious consequences for public safety. In addition, if we are expecting such exacting standards from our CNC officers, and we do, whilst demanding that they wait until 68 before they retire, there of course will be a temptation for ageing officers to perhaps mask health conditions which could undermine their performance if they know their job could be under threat. We all know that most public sector workers are now expected to work for longer. However, there are exceptions for certain classes of workers, and it seems obvious that CNC officers should be included in that exception. Perhaps the Ministers can explain the logic as to why conventional police officers will continue to retire at 60 years old, yet CNC officers are not. However, despite that, CNC officers must meet much higher standards of physical fitness to keep their jobs. And also, whilst conventional police officers have firearm duties as an optional part of their duties, which can be relinquished as an officer gets older, every single CNC officer is required to be fully trained in firearms as an inherent part of their training. And this cannot be relinquished as a CNC officer gets older. It is part of his duties. In addition, the requirement for this very high standard of fitness to be retained until the age of 67, 68 discriminates against women, since only elite standards of fitness for those aged over 60 is expected to be sufficient for them to continue their duties. The vast majority of public servants will be able to draw down a full pension. Should a public service employee choose to retire early, they will have a 6% of their pension deducted for each year they retire early. The problem for CNC officers is that they are not choosing to retire early, but they are being forced out because of physical inability to maintain obligatory standards of physical fitness and weaponry skills. CNC officers are likely to have their careers terminated as they approach the higher retirement age, and they will see their pensions reduced perhaps by up to 25 to 30% as a result. And this considerable financial penalty is proving a major career disincentive. In such a situation, how can the CNC fail to stem the decline in recruitment and retention? And I would say to the Minister, who I really hope does not respond by telling this chamber that we're all living longer and retaining the CNC retirement at 60 would set a dangerous precedent. The CNC is only asking for the same provisions that are already in place for conventional Home Office police officers. But let us turn our attention to costs. Perhaps the Minister would find it reassuring to learn that the CNC has done its own modelling on costs and has shown that the gross cost of retirement age at 60 versus the current plans would be only £4.4 million per year from 2023 to 2030, and £5.2 million a year in the long run. In the short run, these costs would be more than offset by extra case management costs, early retirement and compensation costs. So keeping the retirement age at 60 would produce a net saving of £4.3 million a year. In the long run, once compensation costs are paid, the net saving would be around £1 million per year. Make no mistake, The Civil Nuclear Police Federation has accepted the potential for increased employee contributions to cover increases in costs. So that means there is no real financial obstacle to correcting the unfairness between police services created by the Public Services Pensions Act in 2013 and securing the UK's nuclear safety. I say to the Minister today that increasingly this fine service is being rendered ineffective due to the dithering and delay from his government's unwillingness to resolve this issue. I will indeed.
Honourable Member for giving way and congratulate her on securing this very important debate. With the addition of the around £40 million CNC training facility at Sellafield, where we have the biggest CNC employment base, does she also agree that with that facility and with the nuclear future we're looking forward to, it's more important than ever that we ensure that we have the CNC fit for the future?
Absolutely. And I applaud the new training facility that she mentions, but I'm sure that many CNC officers would see the irony in investing in the training of these officers when there is currently a very serious recruitment and retention crisis. So I think there has to be more joined-up thinking. We know that potential recruits are looking elsewhere, and serving officers are voting with their feet. If the UK government is not willing to listen to CNC officers, and if the Minister's government continues to deny the truth that we can all see, I think everybody in this chamber can see, perhaps the Minister can explain why his government has set a pension age for this service, which he and they know full well cannot be realistically reached by those who put themselves in harm's way in order to keep us safe. And does he accept that if this service continues to be eroded, as his government was warned 3 years ago it would be, and the truth of which is becoming clearer every single day, if there is a situation where nuclear security in the UK is indeed compromised, it will be for his government to explain its decisions as to why this service has been eroded in the way it has in recent years and will continue to erode unless action is taken. And as this service is eroded, every single CNC officer's job becomes more unsafe and it becomes more dangerous as well. As his government dithers and delays, the welfare, well-being and the morale of the 1,250 CNC officers we have is being undermined, and that is simply not acceptable. In today's context, no one needs to be reminded of the increased importance of the role these officers play in keeping us safe. Now, I would say to the Minister that the CNC officers don't want him to stand up and pay them compliments about their bravery and the value of their work. They don't want platitudes, they want action. They want a commitment, and they simply want parity with conventional officers. And I know that the Minister before us today is sympathetic, and I know there is sympathy on the UK government benches for the case for the CNC officers. So it really is time to get this matter sorted. It's already dragged on for far too long, and every day is doing more damage to the service. However, if his government does not see or will not pay attention to the evidence staring them in the face, it should not be a surprise if we see very serious and very catastrophic consequences for national security, as the CNC will undoubtedly increasingly struggle to fulfil its important mission of protecting the UK's civil nuclear sites at home or in transit, and to supplement the resources of armed conventional officers as part of the Strategic Armed Policing Reserve and Operation Temporary. And I will end by urging the Minister to be mindful of the fact that this is not really just about pensions. It's not about pounds and pence. It is ultimately about whether or not his government thinks nuclear security, public safety and national security is worth paying for, is worth valuing, and how much he and his government believe it matters. Now, I know it matters to everyone in this room, and I know it matters to my constituents in North Ayrshire and Arran, in which the nuclear site of Hunterston sits. We all know it matters. The question is, what is his government willing to do in the face of a mountain of evidence to show that it too believes the work, the health, the well-being, the careers and ultimately the safety of our CNC officers matter?
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
Question is that this House has considered the pensions of Civil Nuclear Constabulary officers. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Stringer, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship this morning, as indeed all other mornings and afternoons that I've done the same. I'd like to thank the honourable member for North Ayrshire and Arran for securing this debate. I know that's a platitude, and she asked me not to use platitudes, but I felt I ought to say that, because she and I have been, well, involved in quite a few things together, always on the opposite side. But we do have, I hope, it's a mutual respect for each other, and she knows I'm doing my best to resolve this issue. And I can't disagree with a lot of what she said. That's the platitude, that's the last one, I promise. The other members of Parliament that have intervened are people, members of the House with real nuclear issues, and obviously the way they come today shows their commitment to everything that goes on in nuclear in their area. Speaking particularly about I have to say first, my honourable friend from Copeland, not because she is on my side of the House, but because rarely a week goes by without 2 or 3 meetings, including one, in fact, the night before last, with Secretary of State and everything, and very conscious of her. But the honourable members from Caithness, Sutherland and Liverpool as well, we've discussed on many occasions, and we will always, I'm always available to discuss these matters with them. Yes, of course. I was just getting going.
I do thank the Minister for giving way. It is the level of frustration. I appreciate the kindness of intent by having discussions, but the frustration is, as the Honourable Member said, is the continuing delay which has gone on for years. So if we could keep it as all our mission to try and reach a conclusion that's positive.
I fully accept that point, and I must apologise, Mr. Stringer, for mixing up Hartlepool and Liverpool. I don't know why I did it, and I hope the honourable gentleman is not too offended by that. It's perhaps because I come from in between Leeds, which is between the two, but I got mixed up. Now, I'm therefore not going to say about how important the Civil Nuclear Constabulary is to the nuclear industry, because I think everybody knows. But I would like to place on record that one of my early visits and most significant visits I had in this job was to Sellafield, and I saw the training centre, but not just had a tour round. I saw how heavy their kit is. I know the training regimes they undertake because I spoke to a lot of officers, and I know this is, well, I don't think I myself could walk around all day with the kit they have on and be fully mobile and with the equipment they have to carry. So I accept fully the level of fitness that's required. And Mike Griffiths, who I think is just about to leave the force, he is the Chief Constable, and he explained very clearly to me. And he's transformed the CNC into the modern force it is today. So the CNC itself on the pension front is moving into the new pension scheme on the 1st of April of next year, and I have been keen to hear evidence and representations on the effect of the higher pension age on the effectiveness of the force. We do engage with them, the Federation as well. I met with them last year, and I'm well aware of their views. And as soon as they were brought to my attention, Mr. Stringer, I immediately contacted the Treasury and others in the government to try and resolve this issue. And the least I could do was obviously hear their representations. That's my job, like today. But I fully accept the importance of getting this matter resolved as quickly as possible. I have been involved with them with the Cabinet Office because they administer the Civil Service Pension Scheme. The Treasurer is responsible for public pensions policy, and I've set out these arguments to them. And I know it's very easy, Mr. Stringer, to regard the government as one group because we're all collectively members of the government, which is perfectly reasonable and understanding. But it's my job to support the causes within my department, within government, and this is absolutely top of it. My officials have been working with the Constabulary to gather additional evidence on the impact of the national security point mentioned by the Honourable Lady of the higher pensions age, and I've facilitated a meeting with number 10 this week with the special advisors from number 10 had a meeting with the Constabulary also, which these issues were discussed this week, because I'm trying to bring all these things together to resolve this issue. But it is complex. Like most things in life, Mr. Stringer, it's more complex than it would appear on the surface. And we know, as I've said, the tests and the weapons and all of those things, they're very important. And I don't think anyone who visits or sees indeed pictures of it could deny that. As to the issue of why CNC officers aren't treated as policemen, in a judicial review in the normal way, police officers, there was a judicial review in 2016 that determined that they're employees of the Civil Nuclear Police Authority, so they come under BAYS. Therefore, they're not defined as police officers for the purpose of the Public Service Pension Act. So that's the legal position. And fitness standards were rolled out, as the Honourable Lady said, in the last, 2015 to 2016, and authorised firearms officers must meet the College of Policing mandated standards. Yes?
And he set out his understanding of the challenging and important job that CNC officers do. But can I put it to him that perhaps the reason for the dither and delay from government, across government, is because there appears to be, and I know this from questions I have asked on the floor of the House, there appears to be at the heart of government a real lack of understanding of what these officers are required to do and the challenges that they face and the importance of the role they play.
I must respectfully disagree with the Honourable Lady, only because I have tried it myself. I've been there and I've seen that, and it's not just based on representation, so I hope she would accept that I understand it. But there may be others that don't, but it's my job to make sure they do. I accept that. It's my responsibility and my job. The capabilities, they're very complex. There's these two tests of fitness and firearms capability, and these determine whether the officer is deployable or not. It's the capability of the officer rather than age which is a determining factor. And I think that has to be the right approach. Although I would accept being in the age, as I was explaining to the Honourable Lady before this debate started, that would be in the position to have to do that at my age of 61. I think, although some people are vastly fitter than I am, I would, and I've admitted, would find it very difficult myself. And I know it's harder for older officers to attain the fitness standards, but the College of Policing independently determines the standard that authorised firearm officers must meet in order to do their job effectively and safely. And this is the matter of national security, and I accept it can't be compromised. But as far as the pensions themselves are concerned, the Public Service Pensions Act legislates to introduce this link between scheme normal pension age and state pension age for most public service pension schemes. That was to enable that the cost over the long term remains sustainable. And I'm not going to go further into that because she marked my card that I might go into that, and she doesn't want platitudes about people getting older, and she's quite right. So I won't say that. But we have to accept the fact that in the end, all public service schemes have to be funded, and we have to accept the fact also that public service employees have to work for longer times. And it's with certain areas, prisons are another one, prison officers, there aren't a lot of back office jobs that people who are older can do. In the same way that, for example, in the police force generally, there are plenty of functions, and I mean really, I don't just mean some back office clerical function, but there are many things that are less active that still contribute totally to the objective of that particular police force. And I accept the fact that nuclear is one of those that's less possible because there just aren't that many similar functions. So the equality, and also the equality analysis accepts that it's harder for older female officers to obtain such high fitness standards. And a pension scheme has to be fair to females as well because they have a flatter career trajectory and this sort of thing for this reason. The proposed pension scheme alpha is a career average earnings scheme rather than a final salary scheme, and change contribution rates under this scheme will help employees with the shallower career trajectories, which is historically women rather than men, but also obviously male officers in the same position will benefit. I also want to highlight the ill health retirement provisions because we recognise that CNC officers have a higher rate of musculoskeletal, they're called, disorders from this kind of carrying the heavy kit. And it's the ill health retirement provisions in their current pension schemes are quite strict, and they only allow an ill health retirement where the officer is not capable of any other work. Consequently, officers who gain an ill health retirement are not allowed to do any work after their exit from the force. But the Alpha scheme gives members choice, and it recognises that it's desirable for people to continue working if they're able. And it does afford a lowest tier of benefit to those who are unable to continue working in their role or a comparable one. So an officer could leave the CNC with an ill health pension, but still gain employment elsewhere to supplement the income and have a full working life elsewhere in a more suitable job. Now, on the retention issue, Mr. Stringer, I'm very aware of the current retention issues affecting the constabulary. I've been informed that there's an unusually high number of resignations in the last month alone. There were 26, and that 19 officers are moving to the Ministry of Defence Police. I don't think the evidence presented is strong enough to draw a direct link between the current retention issues facing the CNC and move to a different pension scheme, because many of the officers are resigning, they're moving to a force which has the same pension scheme that the Civil Nuclear Peace Federation is existing. I don't also consider the current retention issues facing the CNC to be a national security crisis, so I would again disagree with the Honourable Lady. The CNC has assured us that they can operate, albeit asking officers to do overtime with their current force strength. And if this changes, of course we'll reappraise the position. But the CNC are still policing our nuclear sites to their required regulatory strength, and our nuclear estate remains secure. I'm grateful for the explanation and arguments that my honourable friend and other colleagues have given today. But I am... Yes, I
just want to ask the Minister, I thank him for his response, but can I just ask him, can he explain, because I know that a lot of CNC officers don't understand this, and I don't either, can he explain why a retirement age for CNC officers has been set, which realistically they cannot reach?
I don't accept the premise that the Honourable Lady said, that say realistically they can't reach. I do accept the fact that some of them can't, but obviously some people can and some people can't, as I mentioned myself, and many people are far fitter than I in doing that job and other dangerous jobs in society. But I do feel, the Honourable Lady told me, Mr. Stringer, and I know this is not your fault, but that she'd applied for this debate for quite some months beforehand. I'm glad we've had the debate today, but if it were to happen in the future, she'd be very, well, I know she's able, but she'd be welcome to contact me directly on issues such as this, that we could discuss, maybe not in such a public forum, but if she found a frustration in the system that she couldn't get a debate. But in summary, I would like to say I've met with everyone concerned in this, and I'm pushing colleagues in Treasury and the Cabinet Office, and I really would like to get this resolved as soon as I possibly can. Thank you.
The question is that this House has considered the pensions of Civil Nuclear Constabulary officers.